Hey there. Welcome to a Carlton Witch Ramble. It has been a while since we've talked about Carlton because obviously they did not have the best year. So I wanted to introduce you to the spreadsheet and I would like to maybe share a little bit with you about where I think the energy makeup went wrong. I'll do a little comparison to Collingwood and then I'll go through all of the names that I have seen come up which if I'm a little bit behind, my apologies, in relation to names potentially coming to the club. So let's just get straight into the spreadsheet. So let me introduce you to my work of art, the spreadsheet. Okay, so one of the things that is very interesting about the Carlton team of 2025 was the incredibly drowning amount of emotional players. So these are the basic makeup of the players' energy charts, right? The map of their psyche, how they are programmed. So some of the things that you can see on here, right? When we're looking, we can see that we've got Charlie, Harry, Jagger, and Flynn, right? And all of them are this innovative rebel energy. Okay. Now, there are a few differences as you can see as we go along there. So let me just run you through. Let's start with Charlie because, of course, he is the talk of right now. So Charlie is this, his ego energy really presents like rebelliously, right? Like he is someone who sees things from a different perspective. All four of these young men see them from this different perspective, right? It's this energy of really being able to sit on the outside of everything. And communication wise, Harry Lemmy and Charlie Curnow had that similar blunt, direct, cold way of speaking. And I think we've seen that from him, especially, we saw Charlie talking to the cameras a number of times, very blunt in what he was having to say. Okay. Now, Charlie, especially this motivation style, very passive and less pushed. And I think we've seen that as well. I think you can see when he plays that unless someone is really kind of on him, he just kind of sits back a little bit. And that's kind of the overall way that he motivates himself and uses his rage and aggression. That's masculine energy placement. So his inner belief system values uniqueness of self. And I think we're seeing that be part of the problem with wanting to leave Carlton right now is 2025 was not really a year where we valued the individual being unique. We were seemingly very closed up, especially at the start of this year, about what we were allowing people to be and say and be seen as. And I think we're seeing that that's because there was a little bit of secret kind of BS going on behind. So when we look at now, you can see here now, power and fear is a generational energy. So a lot of the team born obviously within a few years of each other will have this, right? Now, this power and fear, it brings this desire for truth and it has a need to challenge existing belief systems. Now, which part of their life that shows up in the most is hard to tell without birth time. So please, everybody, get me some birth times. All right. And we can get very, very exact with some of these energies, right? Now, Charlie has this childhood wound of power and control, as well as some trauma there in the background as well. So, Aquarius energy right now is an energy of power, right? And we are in between these massive generational shifts, which really officially began at the end of last year, where before November last year, we were in this energy of power and fear coming from this idea of following the rules, right? Do what you're told, follow the rules, work the 9 till 5. And now we're in this new era, right? We're in this new generational cycle. And that generational cycle says that, the rules and discipline and power and fear is within collective individuality and authenticity. So, all of these light blue placements here, these innovative rebel placements, they are actually points of power. And you would potentially have some in your own map of your psyche. So you can see just the slight difference. So, like, let's we didn't really see Harry, we didn't really see Jagger, poor old Jagger, but we saw Flynn a little bit. And so we can see here that the communication style and mindset between Flynn and Charlie very different, right? So Charlie has this communication style of being blunt, direct, and cold, whereas Flynn has more of an unconventional style, right? And really, the way that his mind works aligns with his inner belief system, aligns with the way that his ego presents itself. And his motivation style, which I think we also saw, much more fiery. Like, this is somebody who there's a little bit of fun in starting shit out on the field. So I think we really need that. And his inner belief system, it is a little bit self-conscious. It is a little bit suspicious. And, he's somebody who you would really have to work to get to know, Flynn. And he has this wound of recognition and success. Now, you can see Harry Lemmy has that as well. And as we go down, we'll see that a few of them do have that. Now, that wound of recognition and success, it does tend to make them very hard workers because it's an inner mentality that continues to tell you that nobody thinks you work hard enough, right? And so it makes them go a little bit harder. Now, I'm really interested in Jagger coming in because I love the ego self. I love the communication style and that motivation style and his aggression style, that masculine energy of Jagger Smith is very hardworking, very much so. And it wants to kind of put on a bit of a show, but not to be flashy, but to show you how hard he works. And his inner belief system is a little bit insecure. It does require some approval from the outside, especially because his childhood wound is that wound of belonging, that wound of being too weird. Now, all of these ego self, innovative, rebel styled people would have had a version of that growing up, feeling a little bit strange, a little bit weird, a little bit different. But Jagger is the one who does have that as like an inner mentality telling him that he's too strange. And that is why we need to really love on him. And I think he really would have got a lot out of this year with the way that everyone kind of sent him a lot of love. So really looking forward to seeing him come out next year. So moving down to these orange ones, Lockie Fogarty, Corey Durden, Ashton Moyer. Now, these are all very fiery human beings, okay? The way that their ego presents themselves is quite fiery. It is very much about expressing their own personal I am energy. Okay. Now, these three men are very different when it comes to the way their mind works and it comes to the way that they motivate themselves. So, Lockie Fogarty is a lot more intuitive, a lot more illogical with the way that his mind works. He tends to do things like in the moment. He's very good. Now, Corey Durden, very stubborn and direct. There is a hard working quality to that communication and mindset, but it may not communicate the way that he wants to, especially in the heat of the moment, because that wanting to put on a show motivation style of his coming out through a very direct and maybe stubborn communication style with that fire ego behind it, especially because we have the self-conscious and suspicious inner belief system. So that can make you a little bit of someone who projects, maybe projecting your own self-conscious feelings, and that quite coming out as quite direct and stubborn. So you may not really, there may be some issues there with communication and building relationships. Okay. Corey is a very hard worker though. Okay. He might seem like someone who does flaunt around a little bit, but he is someone who would be a very hard worker, especially as well with that wound of recognition and success. So Ashton is particularly interesting because, he has this unconventional and independent kind of motivation style. Now, that is a very interesting place, especially for a young man, because it is kind of the place that, like, once you feel like you've locked into what sort of a man you want to be, you want to kind of rebel against it. And that comes in very handy with AFL, in my opinion, because this is someone who can be motivated, who can be using that aggression for fuel to be able to get out there and do things a little bit differently and be quite unexpected in the way that they move around, especially with that direct and cheeky communication style, because it's sort of someone who will be able to see that they've got one over you and then they'll want to rub it in a little bit. Now, this inner belief system that requires nurturing can be a little bit of an issue if we're not having that. I do think that Daddy Voss is the right person to be able to be communicating with these young men that do have these nurturing requirements in their inner belief system. Now, this hate for rules, I think we will see that the more that we see of Ashton. It really will push up on that communication style and that mindset style of being a bit direct and a bit cheeky. It's sort of someone who knows how to bend around the rules, okay? Because it's that hate for rules, but that wound of belonging. That wound of belonging wants to be part of the team. So, this is not someone who's just going to go out breaking all of the rules. This is someone who will find a very cheeky way to get around it. So, as we move down here, let's get into the problem areas. The purple, okay? The purple is absolutely a problem area when it comes to the overall energy makeup of the Carlton team because all of these people are emotional sponges, okay? So, Tom de Koning, good luck to you at St. Kilda. That's a whole other video. Sam Walsh, Lucas and Ben Camporelli, and Adam Sard, right? So all of these players are emotional sponges. And when we have the 2025 that we had, which for Carlton involved a lot of emotional stuff going on, these are the sort of people who absorb that energy from everything around it. Okay. Now, there are a few things that can kind of make you a little bit protected from drowning in that emotion. And there's a few things that make it even worse. So we'll just quickly touch on Tom de Koning because that's going to be an interesting watch for 2026. So even though he has that same emotional sponge energy as everybody else, and that is also the same way that he motivates himself, right? So he can use his emotions to motivate himself. And it is also the wound that he has, right? It's the same energy wound. So power and control is something that he has a childhood wound around, that he questions about himself, that he will either go towards just without thinking, or that he will sit back and let other people make that decision for him. So there can also be a lot of trauma in that childhood placement, that a lot of wounding from the past, and generational kind of wounds. And it's these two particular things, the mindset, communication style, and the inner belief system of Tom de Koning, that is going to be an interesting watch for 2026. So the way he communicates and the way his mind works is a lot to do with ego, is a lot to do with thinking that the sun needs to revolve around him, and it requires a lot of validation, right? So this is someone who needs to be told constantly that they're good, told constantly that they're good. This is also someone who would kind of get really stubborn and foot stomping a little bit if they believe they are deserving of validation and they're not getting it. So it does make sense to me that that is kind of the year that Tom would have had. And it does make sense to me that he thinks that St. Kilda Football Club will be a match for him. Now, he's got this inner belief system also of being very stubborn. So the communication style and this inner belief system, the way they work together for him would be very interesting because he needs that validation. And when he doesn't get it, it's going to knock his stability, right? And his inner belief system needs stability. So he needs you to tell him that he's good. He needs that ego to be stroked a little bit, or he kind of goes into a bit of a spiral about whether or not people love him. So really interesting watch for 2026. Now, Sam Walsh is one of these players that I have across the AFL that I really enjoy looking at their energies, where they have something in their psyche where so many of the parts of their psyche, so you can see here, ego, self, communication style, motivation, and aggression, they're all in the same kind of energy, the same kind of vibe. And that makes you very good at whatever it is you pick to do, because everything aligns, everything talks to each other. So Sam Walsh, emotional sponge, very stubborn and careful with the way that he communicates. So I did have a little bit of a giggle when I saw him say bullshit, because I thought, oh, you chose those words, right? He's very careful with the words that he chooses. And, he's a little bit passive aggressive, which I think you can see as well. And he is a little bit on the defensive side. So this is kind of someone that, and I think you see it when he plays, that he has his goals in mind for him, that he does struggle to believe that he is as good as people see him as. So he is someone who always wants to work towards being better. But if you get on the wrong side of him, this is not someone who easily forgives. So I feel for any of the players who got on the wrong side of him and are trying to rebuild that relationship, because very unlikely. So the Camporellis, which if you've watched any of my other videos, I was never really that excited about. Yes, okay, they can play, but they need to decide that it's for them. Now, I said the same thing about JSOS, that he needed to decide that it was for him, not for his family that he was playing for, because especially with the Camporellis and this wound of belonging and this wound of being too weird, they're really at risk of just playing along with it. You know, this is what I was meant to do, so this is what I want to do. And because that inner belief system is insecure, because it requires, approval, we can see that those things might not work very well together, right? Because how do you decide that it's for you? How do you decide that you want to be an AFL player for yourself, for your own personal goals, when you're worried about not belonging and not fitting in and constantly looking for approval and being a little bit insecure? Okay. This is also that inner belief system, an insecure and approval requiring belief system. It does come from experiencing your father energy as a child, as someone who was kind of in the limelight, right? Like somebody who obviously was well known, was seen quite a lot. Now, something that I find also not very attractive in their energy is this motivation and aggressive style. The assertiveness, yes, totally into that. Dramatic, maybe I'd like to see a little bit of drama, but the childishness with that emotional sponge energy, with that stubborn, careful communication, I'm not all about it. I don't know how it's going to fit in. And I believe that Carlton had in 2025 way too much emotional sponge energy. Okay. And I said a couple of times that we were drowning in it. Okay. Now, Adam Sard is very much the best emotional sponge energy person on the Carlton Football Club team, because he has this motivation style that's very fast. Now, it can be a little bit scattered. So this is not somebody who you would be able to trust to do the exact same effort and preciseness every week, because there is quite a scattered energy to it. And it can be a little bit sarcastic. So I'm not sure how much he leans into that, being the good boy that he is, but that's why he's so fast. This masculine energy being in this is fast, scattered kind of space makes him very fast. And his inner belief system is this is where he is quite a hard worker as well. Anxious, he needs to feel like he's in control. He's very uncomfortable around weakness. So I feel like there would have been some moments throughout 2025 that he really kind of pulled away from some of the players who he would have believed to be weak when it comes to really putting in the work, right? Now, his power and fear is different. He is this problem solver, right? And he has the power to kind of transform things, and he's not afraid of talking about things that are a little bit dark, things that are a little bit taboo, things that are a little bit scary to a lot of other people. And he has quite a transformative energy to him that can really be absorbed by the other players. I think he's a very important energy on the Carlton team. And if we were getting rid of all of the purples, I would still choose to keep him. But he is a very hard worker. The wound of perfection and this self-judgment that he has makes him an incredibly hard worker. There isn't anything that you would really say to this person that he hasn't said to himself. Okay. So let's move down. Let's go down to this green section. So these are your hard workers, right? This hard worker protector energy, right? They know their place. They know what they're for. They lock in. They learn the skill. Now, there is a particular thing in common with this hard worker protector ego self, where it does take its time. It's not interested in you rushing them. It wants to learn the skills completely before it moves on to something else. And I think we've seen that with Harry. And so we can see here that George, Nick, and Ollie all have this blunt, direct, cold communication style, which for the part that they play out there is absolutely on point, right? Because that's exactly what we want. We don't want to mince words. We want to just say what it is that we need to do, move where we need to move, and just go. And that's what makes them so good and so reliable. Okay. Now, I know we didn't see Nick this year, but we've seen him in previous years. Now, then Harry is the difference here. Now, he has a blunt or fiery communication style, right? But with an inner belief system that has a fear of failure and can be a little bit self-centered, and he has a wound around power and control, this hard worker protector energy that he has, it can kind of turn on itself, right? Even though he wants to work hard, even though he feels like that's his job to do, this is somebody who can feel a little bit strange about how to show their masculine energy, right? Especially because there is a very blunt way of communicating. And with that blunt way of communicating also kind of comes this I know everything kind of energy. And so it's very hard for somebody with this energy to be open to new ways of doing things, to be open to new ways of learning and communicating with other people, right? Especially if he's like if that fear of failure button gets pushed, then the rest of it, good luck, right? Because the fear of failure button gets pushed, and then we have that childhood wound of power and control kind of kick up, and then I don't want to communicate with anybody. Like, get out of my way, right? So that's what makes him very different from Ollie and Nick and George, especially that motivation style. Now, Nick is a little bit more of I guess a little bit more of a pushy kind of player, right? Because he's got that motivation and aggression style that's passive aggressive and fucking stubborn, right? It makes him very tough. And he doesn't really care what you think of him because he's in a belief system says that I value uniqueness of myself, right? And he's got the problem solver energy, and this wound of talent that he has is very interesting, and there's not many players that have that across the whole AFL so far in my research, because it's really I don't need you to, like, give me my flowers every week. I don't need everyone putting me up on a pedestal. I'm just gonna come in, I'm gonna do the work, and I'm gonna move on with my life. This is not someone who needs all of the awards and all of the accolades, right? Which I think is really important, especially in the next couple of years of what the energy is bringing for everybody, okay? Now, this is where we get to a very disappointing part of the Carlton energy makeup, right? So we come down here. Oh, I didn't tap on Matt Duffy, but we didn't see him play, so we got to wait that one out. Now, the only fast-minded kind of ego self player that we have is Mark Pitternet. And this is a huge problem because when you make this comparison across the other teams, Gemini people are one of the highest energies throughout the whole entire AFL. And when I put together that spreadsheet, you will see this is where Carlton let itself down. This creative, confident, and this fast mind ego self, we need more of it, and we need less emotional sponges. So Mark Pitternet, very interesting, very stubborn, very hard worker, likes to put on a show, which I think we saw. Now, he does have a fear of failure. He can be a little bit self-centered, but if he is feeling good about himself, then he is very resourceful, okay? But it's this fast mind energy. This is someone who's going to lock in. Now, he might not be very good to, be weird to try and get to know him, right? He doesn't like to go very deep. That's why the ego self also comes with surface level. This is someone who doesn't want to sit, right? Needs to move, needs to do stuff, needs to always be learning things. But because this wound of relationship is there, it's like they will rush through getting to know you. You would never truly know this person unless you spent a lot of time with them. Okay. Now, Francis Evans being the only Leo on the team, this is where creativity, this is confidence, this is ego, right? Literally ego. This is sun energy. And he's the only one. Now, his communication style, very analytical, very practical as well. And this is what I think makes him a very fun player to watch is his motivation style is restless, playful, and it's anger that needs action. And I think we have seen that spark in him. Now, he does have a little bit of a self-conscious, kind of suspicious nature to himself in his inner belief system. And he doesn't really trust himself with that wound of belief and truth. But when we love him, he will shine. So let's continue to love him. Now, when we get to the next sort of dark blue, right? Adam Chera, Mitch McGovern, Blake Acres, Sam Doherty. Sam's out. I think Sam's going to be some kind of teacher. I've been saying that for years. I think that's what he is made to do. But we can see that this ego self energy is balanced and passive. Okay. It's not somebody who really wants to start a fight. Now, there is a vindictive quality to it, there is a little bit of nastiness to it. But all in all, it wants to be part of a team, right? It wants to be liked. It wants to be part of a team. It wants to make sure it's got all of the information before it makes decisions. Now, Adam Chera and Mitch McGovern share the same mindset. They ask a lot of questions. There's a lot of intensity to them, right? They're very perceptive with the way that other people are around them. These two people, especially, very perceptive to what people think of them. You wouldn't need to talk, really. They would be able to tell. Now, Adam has a restless, playful kind of style like Francis Evans, but Mitch McGovern has a risk-taking kind of a motivation and masculine energy, right? There's a passion behind him, and he's very creative with the way that he moves through the world. But his inner belief system is a bit anxious, right? He needs to be in control, and he is uncomfortable around weakness, same as Blake Acres. But Adam Chera is very stubborn and very requiring of stability when it comes to his inner belief system, right? Now, if he does something wrong, that could really shift his mind. Like if he misses a kick, if he doesn't handball to the person he wants to handball to, then that's going to really bring him down because he does hold on to guilt in that space. Okay. And especially with the wound of belief and truth, that really makes it hard to believe that you are doing a good job. Right. So Mitch McGovern, with that anxious style of an inner belief system, very different to this requirement for stability and this readiness to feel guilt that Adam Chera has. And they both have these different childhood wounds and these different ideas of power and fear. Mitch McGovern, much more likely to be a problem solver, whereas Adam Chera wants to challenge. He's going to solve a problem by challenging something, challenging somebody else's belief, challenging how somebody else wants you to go about it. And yeah, Mitch McGovern, with that wound of perfection, it does make him somebody who is a very hard worker. And it is what will make him the most different when it comes to all of these Libra energied people, right? So Blake Acres, and I've said this before, I think Blake Acres was a karmic gift to the Carlton Football Club. I think when he kicked us into the finals, I think that was what he was meant for. So I don't think we need this many Libra energied people. Sam Doherty's out already. Blake Acres, I don't think we need to really hold on to him, mostly because of this mindset, this diplomatic, harmonious mindset. That is not the place. Football is not the place, right? We want somebody, and like even his motivation and aggression is intense and emotional. This is someone who's very emotional, but like doesn't want to tell people when something is wrong. Somebody who is quite intense with how they feel things, but like would never say anything because they don't want to upset anybody, right? Especially because he has this wound of relationship as well. He doesn't really want to be seen in his truth. This is not someone who, and I think we can see it, this is not someone who's very fiery, right? And especially if he's not being loved. Okay. These energied people, this balanced, passive energied people, they're really run by their heart and they do need to be loved. And they get more powerful when they are loved, right? So let's move down. Let's go. Look at that. More purple. Now, this particular purple energy. So then we move down to this other purple energy, which is different to the one up above. This is Pisces energy. So this is a very emotional energy when it comes to trauma, experiencing trauma, and really being absorbent to people's emotions around trauma. And they're also quite absorbent in the same way that the other purple was, but to sort of darker, more secretive kind of energy. Now, these are the sort of people that are quite healing to be around, though. So they sort of absorb some of that dark energy from people, which with the sneaky kind of 2025 that Carlton has had, I think they have become these massive sponges for that energy. And I think we've seen it definitely in Cripps. So they are quite creative, though, the way that they think. There's not a lot of logic to these sorts of energies. They tend to be a lot more intuitive. And especially, let's especially, so these are the same, like, bear with me here. It's an error in the spreadsheet, right? So there is an intuitive and a logical kind of mindset to Cripps and Cotters, right? So they are quite creative and they're very intuitive. So as long as everyone is locked in, and I think we have seen that with the Carlton team, that as long as everyone is locked into each other, then we're in this space of them being able to intuitively do what the fuck they need to do, right? Now, Cotters and Cripps both have a bit of a fiery motivation style, right? Cripps is a little bit more assertive, which perfect for him to be a leader, but Cotters is a little bit more starts shit. And Cotters is particularly interesting. We didn't see a lot of him this year. I'm really hoping to see more of him next year because he will be able to intuitively know how to start shit, right? Like he will be able to know what will piss you off. And I think that's what makes him very fun. And then this inner belief system that's very stubborn, I think also makes him very fun. So, in comparison, Cripps is the same kind of intuitive mindset and communication style, a little bit illogical, and his motivation style being a bit assertive. There's a bit of drama to it as well, and there can be a bit of childish nature if it's pushed the wrong way. So, Cripps, his inner belief system, he needs to be in control. Again, with that assertiveness of the motivation style and that wound of perfection and self judgment, he needs to feel very much in control, right? He does not like being around people who he would consider like not hard workers. Like when I'm saying uncomfortable around weakness, I mean like around people who can't lock in, around people who don't want to put in the work. That is when you would really see the childish kind of nature come out in him. There would be moments where he sort of can make a snide comment or, an offhanded comment to somebody else about somebody who's not really locking in and putting in the work. Whereas Cotters is a little bit more, he does need some stability. So he does need to know that he's doing a good job and that people kind of like him. And he does hold on to guilt quite a lot, but that stubbornness makes him very fun, I think. So then Cooper Lord and Will White here. Now, they both have a lot of similar energy. So they do have the same kind of mindset, very direct, very cheeky, and they're quite intuitive as well. But their motivation styles are different here, right? So Cooper Lord, he is very motivated from having a system, being in control, focusing on a goal, what's in front of me, be realistic, right? And I think that's what makes him able to shift and change what he's doing because he just goes, okay, realistically, what's going on now? What can I control? What's the goal? Once he's locked in, off he goes, especially because that it will be somewhat lifted up by wanting to belong, wanting to be part of the team, wanting to get some of that nurturing. And, even though he doesn't like to follow the rules, he would be constantly kind of seeing if there's a different way to do things. He would be absolutely fine and is absolutely fine being part of the team, right? Whereas Will White, he's a hard worker. There is a really grounded energy to his motivation and aggression in a similar way to Cooper Lord. That's why they're both green. But Will White, he liked to put on a show. He liked to be a little bit flashy every now and then. He liked people to see him. And there is a focus for him on hard work needing a reward, right? Which makes him very different to Cooper Lord, who probably doesn't really need the reward. And interesting because Will White has that wound of recognition and success. So very unlikely that he will ever get the reward that he's searching for until he heals that wound of recognition and success. So again, too much purple, right? So then when we go down here, all of this Sagittarius, okay? Now, we know that Sincotta and Silvani are gone, which I'm sad about Sincotta, but I mean, I would be sad about Jack, but I think he's made the wrong decision. So all of these people, very direct, right? Very direct, very fiery, very goal orientated. There is a little bit of a clowning kind of aspect to it. Like they never really think anything is terrible. These are the sort of people who would joke around in a traumatic situation because they want everyone to feel a little bit better. And because these are the sort of people who learn from everything, right? These are the sort of people who go good or bad, there's something to learn. Now, let's look at where there are some differences because, Jack and Jacob share a lot of energies. Okay. Now, this isn't the whole map of the psyche. So it's interesting when you look at the whole map, but there's a lot more things that we don't need to look at here. And without time of birth, it's very hard to see how these things show up differently for these two. But this is what made Jack and Jacob very good at working together because they have the same communication style, they have the same mindset, they get motivated in the same ways, they use their aggression in the same ways, very realistic, very goal orientated. They're very resourceful. They do have fear of failure. They can be a little bit self-centered, which I think we have seen in Jack, but I don't think we've really seen it in Jacob. Now, there is also this desire for truth and wanting to challenge belief systems, and there is a wound of power and control. Now, interestingly, just as a little side note, the way that these two grew up would severely shift how these energies play out in their lives. So I think you can see that, Jacob is he's very solid in his belief within himself. Okay. And so that's where we don't see his childhood wound of power and control kicking up and running authority over his life. I think we can see that Jacob Wiedering is somebody who is in control of himself, who is his own power. And because that doesn't leave his childhood wound to run authority over his life, the rest of the stuff doesn't get out of control, right? The fear of failure doesn't get out of control, so he doesn't become self-centered. He can stay controlled, goal orientated, and be really realistic. But the blunt communication we've definitely seen. Now, Jack, power and control and trauma in the childhood wound, and obviously we know his father, so he has lived a lot of his life not having power and control over his life. So when we see this sort of energy getting activated in the way that it has, then what do we get? Well, we get, I need to challenge the existing system. I need to be resourceful, but also self-centered because I don't want to fail, right? And from all of the depth that I've looked into Jack Silvani, his fear of failure definitely makes him self-centered. He is he was trying to carve out his own piece of the AFL puzzle. And so obviously the year that Carlton has had made him feel like there was absolutely no way he was going to succeed. Therefore, fear of failure kicks in. Therefore, we get this like realistic, well, I have to leave. And then he's very blunt about it. Okay. This is not somebody whose mind you can change once it's been made up. But I do think that Jack has a lot of work to do on that childhood wound of power and control. And I mean, we are in the next couple of months where that is going to open up quite large for him. So that'll be particularly interesting. So then let's look at Lockie Cowan, where like we can see here, very similar to Jack and Jacob, but his motivation style is quite emotional. So this is somebody, because he has a fiery mindset, he can take that emotion and he can turn it into power, right? He can add fire. So this is someone who, even though he feels the feels, he can use it. He can get it out. He can use the football to get that out of him. And, he does require a little bit of nurturing, right? And he has this wound of recognition and success. So that makes him work very hard. But he is somebody who needs to be told you've done a good job. Okay. He might pretend like he doesn't want to hear that, but he definitely does. So the more we love on him, the better he will be. Matt Carroll, very similar again here, except he has a different communication style. This is someone who's a lot more emotional and someone who, if they're not feeling like they're being recognized for working hard, which they would always feel that with this childhood wound, this is when I want to put on a show. This is where I need to go and do something for approval. This is where I'm taking that energy of needing recognition, needing success, and trying to go overboard. And I think we've seen that because I think we can see that he's very much a younger version, a little bit fiery when it comes to being out there. And we've seen him do a little bit of pushing around. So then we get to Lewis Young. Now, here again, a problem with this passive energy. Okay. So this is someone who, even though he's got this committed and direct kind of fiery ego self, and the same thing with that communication style as Jack, Jacob, and Lockie, this passive unless pushed It just doesn't seem to work very well in the AFL, okay? Now, especially because with a wound of power and control, if you feel like you're out of control, then the fear of failure kicks in, and then you don't want to fucking do anything about it unless someone pushes you. So I think we've got too much of this direct fire energy, and I'm sad that it was Alex that left. Because as you can see, look at this energy. Look at this beautiful energy. I've got a soft spot for him, right? Direct fire, committed. Whoever's watching this who wants to like lock him down, do it. Very blunt and direct with the way that he communicates. There's a coldness to it, which works very well when you're out on the field, right? Not mincing words. Now, this type of goal orientated motivation style, it's very self critical and it does things habitually, right? So motivates from habit, but there's a humbleness to it, right? Like he's not out there trying to be seen. He just goes and does the job. And part of that will come from this fear of failure. And part of that comes from this wound of relationship, right? Needing people to like them, but being very self critical about what that means. But he is very resourceful and he is very direct when it comes to the way that he communicates. So you would know what he needs. The humbleness, I think, is really helpful to this like direct fire committed energy that the ego self has here, because it really does bring it down a notch from being very know it all. Okay. Which I think you can see that in a couple of the other players. So Hudson O'Keefe, we saw a little bit of him. He's very similar as well to Lockie Cowan. Okay. They share all of these energies are exactly the same. Where they're showing up in their life would be a little bit different, and the way that they grew up has filtered it a little bit differently. But he has all of the makings of being able to be as good as Lockie Cowan. Okay. So let's move down, because what have we got? More purple, my friends. Now, these particular purple energies, very different. Okay. There is a power in these, but it's very untrusting. Okay. It doesn't trust anyone. It thinks that everyone's got secrets. And look, everyone does have secrets, but these sorts of people feel it. So the 2025 that we have had, I want everyone to get off Jesse Motlov's back immediately, because these are the sort of people who absorb that sort of energy. They can feel when someone's got a secret. They can feel who they can't trust. They can feel when people are being deceitful. And I think there was a lot of that going on this year for Carlton Football Club. So Jesse Motlop has this blunt, fiery communication and mindset. It's what makes him able to like just go, right? Now, very moody when it comes to the motivation style, right? Can be a little bit manipulative and, not overly loud on the masculine energy, a little bit mildly tempered. Okay. Now, he does need a little bit of nurturing. He does hate your rules. He wants to make his own rules, but he does have this wound of recognition and success. So he is trying to, succeed, but he also doesn't believe that he can, right? So the more that we love him, the better he is. But this motivation style, this moody motivation style mixed with that mindset, perfect, because it means that he might be absorbing this energy of people being deceitful around him, and he can turn that into the fire to be able to motivate himself. Whereas the other two of this brooding energy, very different, very different. Okay. So Billy Wilson, especially, he is very emotional. He absorbs emotions from everywhere and he is very intuitive. Okay. Now, he has a fear of failure and responsibility. And he needs to be his own boss, right? That's what he wants. I want to be my own boss, because that's the only way that I get myself to recognition. That's the only way that I get success, is I have to be my own boss. I have to solve my own problems. Okay. But very emotionally driven. So anything emotional going on, he's absorbing it, and he's not going to be of his right mind when he's absorbing other people's energies. So Jackson Binns, diplomatic, harmonious, does kind of work here in the communication. But when you're already untrusting, and then your motivation style can be a bit childish, and you're anxious, and you've got a wound of perfection, and you are very judgmental of yourself. And this is where I find, and this goes across the whole AFL, that this Scorpio energy, this brooding kind of energy, unless it's in the right team space, unless it's in the sort of team that it has very open and trustworthy communication with each other, it never works, because you need a team dynamic, obviously. And when there's distrust, there's distrust. And, Jackson Binns being, doesn't want to start shit. So not likely to say when he's feeling anxious, but to more act a little bit like a child. Okay. Now, down to your classic stubborn, hard-working energy, Brodie Kemp, Elijah Hollands, Nick Haynes, Harry O'Farrell, all stubborn, hard worker energy. Brodie, Elijah, Nick, stubborn, direct communication style. Now, Brodie Kemp has this restless, playful kind of energy to his motivation, but his anger can turn into action. So he is a little bit suspicious of people. He is a little bit self-conscious. He doesn't really believe that he is a very good player. So we have to love him. The more we love him, the more that he will believe it. And, this is great energy. Brodie Kemp has fantastic energy for the AFL because, again, he can turn any kind of rage, anger, frustration, he can turn it into that stubborn, direct mindset, and he can put the work in to get rid of it. So Elijah is especially important on a number of levels, on a spiritual level and on the level of part of what Carlton's purpose is here in the world, on the greater collective. You can go and watch my other video if you want to get into that. So very stubborn, hard worker, very direct, right? Now, this fast, scattered, sarcastic motivation and aggression style, mixed with being very self-conscious and this wound of recognition, this is where we see problems. Now, he has a number of other aspects in his map of his psyche that do make him somebody who is quite prone to spiraling a little bit, okay? Because none of these people, none of this Taurus energy really wants to go deep on feelings, right? And all of this Taurus energy has a really hard time with things like shame and guilt, right? They are the direct opposite of the people above them, right? So they are not the sort of people to want to get weighed down in feelings, in especially feelings around shame and guilt. And they are the sort of people that will take a lot of time to process those sorts of things. So when you have the wound of recognition and success, and you are this stubborn, hard worker, Taurus, ego self, once you get it in your head that you're not good enough, and then you have a very scattered masculine energy and a very stubborn mindset, it can take a long time to get out of that, right? Now, that's quite different to Nick Haynes, another one of the stars, in my opinion. Stubborn, hard worker, stubborn, direct communication. Motivation, fiery, likes to start shit. I think we've definitely seen that. Values uniqueness of self. This is what makes Nick very powerful, okay? He is a problem solver who values uniqueness of self, right? Doesn't give a stuff what you think of him, okay? Doesn't care about your awards, doesn't care about your accolades, doesn't want a pat on the back every time, right? Because he has this wound of talent, this wound of recognition and creativity, which these wounds have to be overcome. But while we're overcoming them, sometimes these are lifelong wounds that we have to overcome. For him, it really means get out of my way. I'm coming in, I'm being myself, I'm solving the problems, I'm doing the job. Leave me be. And he does so without needing all of the awards and all of the pats on the back. Something that potentially, some of the players on the Collingwood team, not mentioning any Nick, who could maybe deal with a bit of that energy. Okay. Now, Harry O'Farrell, okay, stubborn hard worker, very cheeky mindset, passive aggressive in the motivation style, but can turn that into a bit of directness when he plays. The insecurity can be a bit of a problem because he does need a lot of approval and he has that wound of belonging again. So needs approval to feel like he's part of the team. Okay. I think this is potentially too much of that energy just because it's stubborn, and Carlton as a whole is very stubborn. So we need a lot more people that can shift their mindsets, okay? That's what makes Nick perfect, because he does value that uniqueness of self. Now, last up is the intellectual energies, right? So Zach Williams, Orazio, who we know isn't playing anymore for Carlton, and Jordan Boyd. So very detail orientated, very hardworking, okay? Now, this is where we see Zach and Orazio both having this same diplomatic and harmonious kind of communication style and mindset. And this is where they differ, because Zach kind of with that wound of perfection and self-judgment, right? Wants to work very, very hard, but can be a bit passive aggressive and a bit stubborn with how he goes about things, right? Like wants to do it his way and won't want to communicate that to anyone, won't really be great at communicating how he feels and what he wants in the world because he's a bit too diplomatic and doesn't want to cause any fights with the way that he communicates, okay? Likes to balance things up before he has an opinion. Whereas Orazio, he's got the wound of relationship. So he kind of is very hard to get to know, right? Like this is somebody who would take a very long time to be like one of the boys. And I think we saw that, right? A lot of anxiousness to it and very emotional in the way that his masculine energy presents, right? There is an intensity to it, which he would have a really hard time speaking about. So he could really become just a ball of kind of anxiety, which I think we've also seen. So I do wish him luck. I do think that he has got a lot of amazing skills. But like I said, this diplomatic and harmonious energy I find it just doesn't quite fit, right? So Jordan Boyd, and this is somebody who is exactly his energy, right? So he is quite intellectual. He can find ways to do things. He is a hard worker. He looks at the details and things, and he's able to kind of be quite habitual about it, right? Now, he's very analytical and very practical with the way that his mind works, right? The communication style is very detail focused. So he would be able to explain to you the details of lots of things, but emotions is not going to be one of them. Now, his motivation and aggression style is very assertive. Now, his motivation and aggression style is very assertive, but I think we have seen it be more dramatic and childish than we have seen it be assertive. And that's because there is a stubbornness to his inner belief system that holds on to guilt, right? Now, because he also has this childhood wound of power and control, he would not at all like being told what to do, which I think we've also seen. So that's the overall energy of the team, right? So all of the purple, that's too much purple. This is too much emotion, okay? This is too much stubbornness. This is too much emotion. This is too much people who don't really want to pick a side, okay? So what we need more of is this, okay? We need more fast mind. We need more creative confidence, okay? We need more fire. We need more innovative rebels, okay? So here's where I wanted to show you the comparison over here, okay? All right. So over here we can see, just look at the differences here, okay? Now, Aquarius energy, this blue energy, that is the innovative rebel energy, and it's very important, right? It allows you to see things from a different perspective. So you can just see here that Collingwood have got 4 who played most of the games. Right, we only had Charlie, and he played 18 games. Right, Flynn was there for a little bit, but he newbie, so he needs to kind of earn his wings. Right, so there's a problem there, imbalance there. Then we go down to the fire, and we've got Lockie Fogarty, Corey Durden, and Ashton, and they've got Bo McCreary, right, who played most of the games. So we had Lockie who played most of the games. I think we're okay on the fiery energy. You could always use more. Honestly, you can always use more. Now, when it comes down into here, I think this is particularly interesting because this Cancer energy, look, it can go either way, right? It's very stubborn energy. So it doesn't have any discipline unless it has an emotional connection to what it's doing. So, Sard, he definitely has an emotional connection to what he's doing. Sam Walsh does too. And Tom de Koning, does he? Because when did he decide to go to St Kilda? So I question that. I question his emotional connection to the Carlton team, and I question whether or not that affected the way that he played. But we can see here these 4 very solid: Jeremy Howe, Daniel McStay, Patrick Lipinski, and Darcy Cameron, right? All very solid, very much part of the Collingwood vibe and have found their place, therefore very disciplined. Now we get down here to the reliable Capricorn energies. Now, this is particularly interesting because look at how important these Capricorns are on the Collingwood team, right? Very important. Played most of the games. This is where we were let down, yeah, because we only had Ollie and George Hewitt because Nick Newman, our other one, not playing, and Harry dealing with his own shit, okay? So you can see how important these very stable energies are. And, we can always have more more Capricorns. Okay. So then this part, right? Look at this. Now, these are the fast-minded people. We got one, Pitto. Collingwood have got Tim Membry, Ed Allen, Charlie Dean, Tom Mitchell, Will Parker, Will Hayes. They've even got some new ones coming up, right? But look how important these people are. Just look, very important, very fast, very able to pivot, right? Very good in the moment. And then they've got one Leo. We've got one Leo. They have Jamie Elliott, who played 23 games, was pivotal in so many of them. And we have Francis Evans, only played 9. Huge problem. We need more of these energies. Okay. Now, when we go down into this Libra energy, so this is that passive energy. We had Adam Chera out there most of the time. We had Blake Acres out there most of the time. And then we had Sam and Mitch, who really, Mitch is the toughest of that passive energy. And they had Jack Crisp and Lockie Sullivan. They're not overdoing it with the passive energy, right? Now back to the purple. We've got all of this purple, right? All of these emotional people. Cripps, Lord, White, Cotters. Cotters didn't play very much. He does have a cheekiness to him, so we can keep him. But you can see, right? Jordan De Goey, Mason Cox, they didn't play every game. 9, 8, okay? We're not drowning in emotions, right? Then we go into the Sagittarius. The Sagittarius also very reliable, but you can see here, okay? Lockie Schultz, Dacos, Perriman, okay? Especially Dacos and Perriman played most of the games. All right. We had Weeders, and then Jack played some, and then Lockie played some. These are the sort of energies that they need to have habits, right? They need to know what they're doing. They need to know what the mission is. So when we're changing them up, when we don't have them out there all of the time, that can also be a problem because there is a bit of a stubbornness to these energies, okay? Now we go down, back to the purple. You see? Billy Frampton, the only one. Okay, this is that untrustworthy energy. They don't trust anyone energies, right? We had the 3 not playing all of the games. Jesse did play a lot of them, and Jackson was there for a bit, and Billy was there for a bit. But again, we're drowning in comparison. Then these solid energies here, right? So Dan Houston and Markov. So Dan Houston, very important. And it is important to have some of these energies. And we had Nick. Thank you so much, Nick. I think we definitely needed Elijah. I think he is somebody who, him and Brody and Nick all together, that would be a really nice mix of people. All right. Now, the Virgo energy, we had Zach, Orazio, and Jordan, and they had Maynard, Hoskin Elliott, and Steele for some of it. So Braden Maynard is very important. The way that he notices details and the way that his aggression comes out is very important. And the same, Hoskin Elliott, noticing details, right? So we had Zach, and, that's it. We didn't really have a lot of these detail-oriented players. I just added these extra ones on the Collingwood team who didn't play any games because look at these backup energies here. They've got Virgos ready to go. They've got another Aquarius. They've got some Aries. I don't know about these guys. They've got just one of these, right? So thankfully we've got Jagger because who knows what Charlie's going to do. The cards keep telling me that he is going to Gold Coast. So now let's just quickly, let me give you my opinion on these people who've been linked to Carlton. Malcolm? No. Okay, Malcolm, no. You are an emotional sponge. You got fast mind. I'll give you that. Fast mind, very direct kind of way of going about things. A bit pretentious when it comes to building relationships, okay? And you think you're a bit weird, okay? So I'm going to say no, Malcolm. Sam Flanders, I would say yes. Now, if any of these people have been picked, please let me know in the comments because I am definitely not up to date with that. Sam Flanders, yes, definitely. We need more of that, okay? This is somebody who, fast mind, when it comes to relationships, right, can build a relationship with anyone, very direct with how their masculine energy presents, is having another 6 months of some of the luckiest energy of his life. And yeah, really moving towards looking for like the family home when it comes to career, right? The family space where I'm going to feel nurtured because he does have this wound of thinking is too weird. Okay. So Jack, yes. I'm going to say yes to Jack, obviously, and Aries. We need more of that. Also, next year, he is going to be entering some pretty forward moving energy when it comes to his career. And he has one of the luckiest, he has a lot of the luckiest energy that I've seen in a while. And he is kind of here to bring a lot of change. So he's going to have a great year if he's on the path that he wants to be on, because otherwise he will have a terrible year while he gets redirected. Ned Reeves. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. Okay. You are going to have a good next year, I think, but I think you come from a lot of trauma, and I think that you're very untrusting. And I think this judgmental masculine energy style and the way that you've come from trauma, I don't think you want to play for Carlton. I think they are too much of an emotional team. Now, Buku, big yes. Big yes. Yes, please. Okay. Very fiery and driven, very intuitive communication wise, very intuitive when it comes to building relationships. Okay. This is someone who works very hard, who understands hard work brings reward, and is absolutely going to put his heels in and work as hard as he can. He's going to have an excellent next year as well. The next 2 years of his life are going to be aligning him with what he is here to do. And he is trying to find his authentic place, right? But this is someone who will lock in. So, like I always say, I'm not someone who knows what all of your skills are, but based on your energy, big yes from me. Ollie Florent, big no. Big, huge no. No, thank you. Now, Ollie Florent shares a lot of energy with Sam Walsh, and it is the energy that gets you injured. So I don't really know much about Ollie Florent and his injury past, but no, thank you. He has been, for the last year, he has been kind of pointed towards where he wants to go for his future through learning lessons of the past. And he is very absorbent to emotions, and he has a very direct, attention seeking way of communicating. And that energy, that purple energy, that Cancer energy, prone to injuries, especially when you're over prone to injuries, especially when you are holding on to too many emotions. So just with the way that the Carlton Football Club are, I don't think we need any more of that. Now, Ben Ainsworth, though, lock him in. Okay? Lock him in. If we can get our hands on him, let's get our hands on him. Very intuitive with how he uses his masculine energy, very intuitive with how he expands. This is a magic person. Okay? This is a magic person. Once they kind of overcome some of the challenges here, this is somebody who is incredibly powerful with bringing change. Okay. Now he will enter next year. He is entering into a phase of kind of asking himself, what sort of a man do I want to be? And he's being absolutely supported to do so through learning these lessons of the past, of how maybe his masculine energy hasn't allowed him to be his best, because there has been a lot of kind of trauma around that. There's a lot of masculine energy situations that would have existed for him growing up that made him feel like he wasn't doing it right. And that's kind of what he's overcoming. But next year, I mean, let's lock him in if we can. Whoever gets him next year will be very happy with him. Ryan Burton, okay. Yes. And like, I'm not a big yes, but a little bit of a yes. Okay. Now, the reason I'm not a big yes is because he does have that passive masculine energy style, and I'm not super into that. He is entering into what sort of a man do you want to be. He does have the placement that says, I don't really want to be seen. I don't need to be flashy. And, he potentially has some emotional stuff to go through over the next little year. So maybe on the Ryan. Now, Zach Butters, maybe as well. His energy could fit, all right? Like we've lost Orazio. Orazio is a Virgo energy. Zach Butters is a Virgo energy. They're very different in the way that their energy presents, though, because This is someone with a lot of ego behind their masculine energy, a lot of confidence in their masculine energy. And this is someone who is very analytical when it comes to the way their mind works. This is what makes him such a good player. He's very good at building relationships, and he is currently expanding through some very chaotic energy. So I think you wouldn't even be able to guess what's going to happen for him really in the next 6 years. But currently he is, having a lot of chaos that's trying to bring in change, and he is learning a lot of things and removing a lot of old patterns from the past in order to move forward. And he has one of the luckiest energies supporting his forward movement. Now, two that I think I have seen that are coming to Carlton, correct me if I'm wrong. Harry Dean, I'm not sure about. Liam, I think yes. Witch, amazing. This is a fast person. Now, they feel very deeply, but the feeling very deeply helps them communicate, right? They're very intuitive communication wise, speaks the same kind of communication language as Daddy Voss, which is very helpful. Fast mind, fast legs. Fast mind, fast legs. Very easy to lock in and work hard. Has this wound of like, people think I don't work hard, but absolutely wants to lock in and work hard, wants reward for working hard, believes in reward for working hard, and is currently having good luck in his forward movement. Okay, so I am all for Liam. Harry, I'm not so sure. This is someone who is being pointed towards his future, though. This is someone who probably grew up with, in a bit of a strict household, right? In a bit of a strict household, having a lot of rules, and potentially a little bit of trauma around not having power over their own life. So maybe, I'm going to say for Harry, I'm really happy if the Liam is a yes. So that's what I've got for you. That's what the Carlton Energy team looks like. Let me know if there's anyone I need to look into draft wise. I am going to be jumping into that next. And I'll probably do another video asking the cards about Charlie, because what the fuck. But yes, so as far as the 2025 Carlton team went, we were overly emotional. We were drowning. We were water and earth making mud, which is heavy. What we need is more air. What we need is more fire. And that is how we will make changes within the club. Interestingly, if you're playing at home, Graham Wright is a Gemini energy, meaning that he is someone who can bring change. And those people right now are actually bringing change. And I've forgotten his name. The other man, head of football, I think, Chris Evans, he is a Scorpio. So he wants to invest. He's someone who can already kind of tell where people don't trust other people. And then we have Graham bringing in some change. So I think so far, I think we're on the right track. And I think if the women's AFL is anything to go by, I think there has certainly been an energy shift within the club. And I'm really looking forward to seeing who else they bring on board. So apparently I need to go down and break the curse at Icon Park. So keep an eye out for that information if you want to come and join me. And for anyone who watches the Jumper Punch, I will see you on there tonight, while I try not to scare the absolute crap out of Andy and Rocco. So that's what I've got for you. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, go Blues. Hopefully you get your shit together. Stay weird.